integrated assessment into the chemistry 2 laboratory that we teach. I was walking down the hall this afternoon, or this morning, trying to get ready for this, and I had my shorts and t-shirt on, and it reminded me, last fall, my introductory chemistry class, I walked in, and students were kind of bemoaning the fact that school had started, and the weather was hot. I was sort of empathizing with them a little bit, and I made the mistake of saying, well, I understand, guys, I haven't worn pants all summer. Long pants all summer. About half the class was split there. We wanted to make sure that the students connected the lecture experience with their laboratory experience in general chemistry. We think that it's a great value to sit in lecture, learn the material, but then experience it in lab with a hands-on approach to it that reinforces the learning. But students so often feel that the lecture and lab are very disconnected. They have a hard time making that leap, which in our minds isn't that big of a leap because we try very hard to make sure that the material they learn in lecture is the same as what they see in lab. But sometimes students have a hard time connecting that. And so one of the ways that we try to make it easier for them is laboratory material follows or lags behind the lecture material by about 2 to 3 lectures. So that way all the students in lecture have seen the material once at least in the lecture, have done homework over it, may have even been quizzed over it before they get into the lab and experience it hands-on. But we wanted to test to see if the students were really grasping the material and also maintaining that grasp and keeping a hold of that information by the end of the semester. So we developed an assessment tool for this, and we used a little bit of carrot and stick approach. The carrot approach for the students that works with some of the students is that they're going to be asked to do exactly what they've done previously in the lab, previously in the semester, which is a little twist to it. And for the stick approach, it's going to be great. So hopefully one of those approaches will work for every student. So I decided to do assessment number 4, critical analysis, synthesis, and assessment. Okay, so by the end of the semester, we want our students to have gained enough critical thinking skills to complete and understand reading assignments and laboratory work without the need for detailed direction, without explicit directions. We begin the semester with laboratories that give you a step-by-step cookbook approach with how to complete the lab. Do this, next, take this, and pour this in, very detailed. You really don't need any chemical knowledge to do the lab at the beginning of the semester. By the end of the semester, we tell them up front, we've got to kind of hold your hand at the beginning of the semester, giving you explicit directions. At the end of the semester, we want you to do a lab where we give you the material, we say, here's the result that we want to get from you. You have to figure out how to build a bridge. And so we tell them at the beginning of the semester so they know where they're headed. We discussed, well, what do we want to test in the semester? We want them to have certain skills and also a certain knowledge base. So in General Chemistry 2, we decided that acid-base chemistry was the most important concept students need to take away from the course. Acid-base chemistry is a sort of a secondary topic to the main topic of equilibrium. And equilibrium involves everything from how drugs interact with your body. The amount that you swallow is not necessarily the amount that gets absorbed into your bloodstream. You often excrete a good portion of it. And that has to do with equilibrium. And so those who have been at med school, pharmacy school, try to relate that to their learning. Deals with thermodynamics, how heat flows, and also acid-base chemistry. So it's a very broad topic that is of significant importance to a wide variety of fields. So during this semester, we teach the students how to standardize a solution of sodium hydroxide, a base. They're asked to determine the amount of acid in vinegar from the grocery store. How much acetic acid is in vinegar? That's what gives vinegar the nasty smell. They're asked to determine the end point and the equivalent point of an acid. So at what point do you have equal amounts of acid and base in your flask? And they're asked to calculate the pH of aqueous mixtures of strong acid, weak acid, strong base, weak base. So by adding different amounts of those four things to one flask, you can come up with about 18 different combinations. And those 18 combinations are every possible type of answer that we can ask them. So if they can do those 18, they should, in theory, be able to answer all of our questions about acid-base chemistry. This is the only time that the students are explicitly taught these techniques and this information. We start at a very elementary level and work up, assuming that the students have had no background in acid-base chemistry. So we're assuming that they're learning all their knowledge in our lecture and in our lab. But we want them to understand, apply, and probably most importantly, retain what we're teaching them, because in a couple of years when they get to Paul Daylor's biochemistry lab, the first lab, he tells the students, all right guys, I want you to make 4 acid-base solutions. Here they are, here's the concentrations and the chemicals, go. So the students who were fortunate enough to retain this information can do it in about half an hour. There's always a handful of students who are there 3.5 hours later, still trying to figure out how to start. So Dr. D often brings a dinner and just waits for them to figure it out. And so one way or the other, they do realize how important this topic is. So at the end of the semester, after they've hopefully acquired this knowledge base and these techniques, by doing at least 3 acid-base chemistry labs during the regular semester. At the end of the semester then, we ask the students to standardize a solution of sodium hydroxide, exactly what they did about a month before. We ask them to determine the concentration of an unknown acid. The only thing that we change is the identity of the acid. It's no longer acetic acid and vinegar. The instructor and the TAs evaluate the students in terms of their laboratory technique. So we watch them use the balance, we watch them use the burette. It's a glassware that dispenses a volume of base solution. And the difference is we don't give them a laboratory guide. When the students walk in, I say, here's your acid, here's your base, you're going to need to standardize your base. You need to figure out what the concentration of acid is in my solution here. Go. And I have the glassware that they need and the equipment that they need, I have it out for them. But they have to recognize what they need and how to answer my question. I do give them the grading rubric about a week in advance so they can see exactly how they're going to be evaluated and where the points are going to come from. One of those techniques, I'll show you here. I have acid in here as well as most of the base that I need. And one of the techniques that they have to learn is when to stop the titration. We use an indicator. It's another chemical that changes color either in the presence of an acid or a base. And so I have phenolphthalein indicator in here. It used to be the active ingredient in Hexlax. So we tell them, the students, don't get it on your hands. Significantly fewer students in lab. So when you get to the end point, you get a faint pink color. And that's about as dark as you want to go. That's almost past the end point. And so there's a technique to delivering maybe half a drop to get to the right point. So when students say, Have I gone too far? I don't even look. I say, if you have to ask me, the answer is always yes. So at that point, the student's going to have to start over again, and they lose points because they're having to repeat a trial. And we explain to them in real life, time is money, and so they're using their extra time, using extra equipment, using extra solution. So we tell them all that up front at the beginning of the semester. All right, so here's the rubric. This is a one-page rubric. I've cut it into 3 slides so we can see it. Here are the important things. I want to know what the concentration of the sodium hydroxide solution is that I gave you. So you have to standardize it. And then you have to tell me what the concentration of the unknown acid is. That's the second part. So those are the final 2 answers that I want to look at. Along the way, we watch the students to make sure they're using the balance correctly. Are they pushing the button to make the balance go to 0 before they place something on it, so that they're massing something accurately? The flask check. Is your flask bright, hot pink, or is it very, very faint pink when you're done with it? Are you using your burette correctly? Burette is a long, skinny tube that you turn the stopcock and it drips out the solution, and you have to read how much you've dispensed. And there's a technique to reading that value off the burette. So we check that. And then also the volumetric pipette is another dispensing piece of glassware that dispenses a set volume of solution. So we watch them use that, and we evaluate their laboratory technique on that also. Here's where we get the points. So there's 2 big answers, and then the laboratory technique. Balance, pipette, the indicator, did they clean up? Mama. And safety. Did they wear the goggles the whole time? Were they acting appropriately in lab? And then if they have to repeat a trial, we'll take points off. Whether it's because you've gone way past the endpoint, or maybe you spilled something, even by accident. As long as it wasn't caused by another student, we chalk it up to, all right, gotta repeat the trial. We allow the student to make the decision as to whether it's worth it to repeat the trial or not. All these points, possible points, or we give them possible points or partial credit, depending on how far off their final 2 answers are. They have to do all their work in lab, including the math. And so if their numbers are off, we check the math first to make sure it wasn't math error. And then we evaluate standard deviations away from the true answer. And in this case, the true answer is what I get. I repeat my trial several times and then average the answer, and I consider that the true answer, using the same laboratory equipment that they're using. So, this is the rubric that we came up with evaluating students. We've done this 2 semesters, and the first semester, this past fall, there's 1 lecture section and 1 lab section. It's the off semester in the fall. Most students are taking GChem 1, a handful of students take GChem 2 in the fall. And so with GChem 2, there were only 16 that started the semester. So I had the students in both lecture and lab. And we ended up with 12 by the end of the semester, which that's about a normal attrition rate for the fall. The mean, the median, both I think significantly improved. I did have, in terms of full disclosure, my rate was actually 3. That was a student who logged in and came to lab, but didn't do any work in the answering the questions. So I feel justified in throwing that one out. So in the fall, I think we had great success in not only did they retain what they learned during the semester, but they continue to improve by the end of the semester. I know that they were very nervous about this. This was the first time we did it, and I do know that they studied significantly for it. So I knew they were prepared. In the spring semester, there were 2 lecture sections of different professors, and I think 5 or 6 labs. And so the numbers didn't jump, but they maintained. And so I think that again shows that they've at least retained what they learned during the semester. So I was pleased to see these results, and I think one way we might tweak it a little bit in this coming semester to try and improve it is in the points breakdown. I think we might show explicit points for the math portion of the calculations, and then points for the final answer, so that way they can see that their math does count significantly towards this as an independent grade. Guys, have any questions?
So for assessing critical thinking skill number 4, this is a proxy for that in some ways, and it's a proxy for a number of other desired outcomes in chemistry, in other ways. So my question really isn't for you so much, Matthew, is for sort of the critical thinking task force in general. Is this sufficient? Is this acceptable as a representation of here I've assessed? We've taught critical thinking skill. I can explain why I think this process will reveal it, and I've assessed it in this way, and here are my numbers, evidence. Is that sufficient, or is there too much noise here, and is this not enough accurate measurement of assessment of critical thinking specific? And I don't ask in a hostile way.
In terms of the end value, or in terms of?
No, in terms of the whole process.
Details. Okay.
Right. So the design of this assessment. Because as I think about how do I assess my students in my class where I want to teach critical thinking, of course it's integrated with, as we've been talking all day, of course it's integrated with everything in the rest of the course. And I'm testing history knowledge, and I'm testing critical thinking, but I'm also testing sort of logic and philosophy and a number of writing skill, grammar, right? How can we really assess what we want to assess and report to whoever needs to get that? Because of course I don't care to produce numbers or a test score or assessment to anybody else if all I want to do is for me to know whether I think I'm communicating this. So this is for somebody outside of me. What do they want? Is this enough? What have we found? I don't know if this is a question for you, Mary, or?
Well, it was enough.
It wasn't.
We accepted it. Yeah, we accepted it from Matthew. I always look at these in terms of the realization that I don't know your discipline the way you know it. So I go in giving you the benefit of the doubt. The way the grant was written, we hoped that there would be, that 80% of the students would show improvement from one to the other. So that, you know, that's not real tough. But if that doesn't happen, we don't say, well, that didn't happen, so this is not going to work. You got to do it again or something. No. So we're not harsh judges of it. And reading it, I generally start in giving the faculty member the benefit of the doubt. And if it looks like that they had a genuine effort. But the chemistry faculty, and not just Matthew, you know, this one, they felt like that it was successful enough in what they were trying to do, not just to meet the grant requirements.
Right.
That they decided to do it again, and that was powerful to me also.
Right.
That they were pleased with it and felt like that it did what they needed to do. So that's the way I go into looking at it.
I've heard a couple people today suggest something I agree with, that you know, you can informally, anecdotally, in working with students in groups or in non-evaluated things, you could turn in numbers for. You still get a good sense. Right?
That's true, and I've read research that that suggests that teachers' observations and sort of intuition about it are as accurate as any other kind
But
of
of course, you
assessment.
can't report that to, I mean, it depends on where it's
Right,
going.
right, yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I was.
No, you're good.
Does that help?
We're gonna continue this,
Okay.
and as a department, or as a division, we feel it's adequate to continue it as part of our internal assessment.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, that was what I really liked about it, especially, was that that the whole exercise provided for them something that was practical enough that they wanted to continue using it, and not just something we have to check off for Title III. We do have to check it off for Title III, but we hope that it's much more valuable than that, and I felt like in this case it was. So the same would go for other